Is Caitlin Clark's future with the Indiana Fever already in question? That's the explosive question echoing across the WNBA today after Sophie Cunningham and Lexy Hall delivered a stunning announcement that no one saw coming. Fans are calling it the bombshell of the season, and even seasoned analysts admit they've rarely seen teammates step forward with news that carried this much weight. The delivery wasn't dramatic in presentation, no flashy graphics, no staged press event, but precisely because it was raw, direct, and deeply personal, the impact was seismic. Cunningham and Hall, both respected figures in the league, chose to speak not as corporate spokespeople, but as loyal teammates whose words seemed to come from the heart. What makes this so shocking isn't just what was said, but who was saying it. Normally, announcements about a player like Caitlin Clark, arguably the biggest rising star the WNBA has seen in years, would come from management, a coach, or even Clark herself. But this time, it was her closest allies, Cunningham and Hall, stepping to the forefront. That choice alone has fueled speculation. Was this a coordinated effort with Clark? Or was it the two of them deciding to break the silence on something too important to ignore? Either way, the result was the same. It left the basketball world gasping. Within minutes, social media lit up like wildfire. Hashtags surged, fan pages exploded with theories, and insiders began scrambling to interpret the meaning behind their carefully chosen words. Was this about Clark's health, her role on the team, or even something bigger, a commentary on the way she's been treated in the league as a whole? The absence of immediate clarification only added to the frenzy. Coaches, rival players, and even sports commentators from ESPN to independent podcasts admitted they were blindsided. But here's the real kicker. When teammates step forward with news about a star player, it often signals that something serious is brewing beneath the surface. And with the Indiana Fever already in the middle of a pivotal season, the stakes could not be higher. Cunningham and Hall aren't just teammates, they've become Caitlin's protectors, her closest circle inside a league that hasn't always been kind to rookies. If they're the ones sounding the alarm or drawing attention to something major, it forces everyone from fans to executives to pay attention. The WNBA thrives on drama, competition, and star power, but this moment feels different. It's not about a highlight reel or a post-game stat sheet. It's about loyalty, about bonds, and about two teammates choosing to speak publicly when silence might have been easier. And that's what makes this announcement so controversial. Is it a show of strength, a protective gesture, or the first sign of cracks in Caitlin Clark's seemingly unstoppable rise? Whatever the case, this opening chapter has already set the tone for a story that could define the Indiana Fever's season and maybe even reshape the WNBA landscape itself. What separates this announcement from every other headline we've seen this season is simple. It wasn't routine. In fact, it was the opposite of routine. Usually, when fans hear breaking news about a player of Caitlin Clark's stature, it comes in the form of a medical update, a press release about minutes restrictions, or a carefully curated statement approved by team executives. But what Sophie Cunningham and Lexy Hall dropped was none of those things. It was raw, heartfelt, and deeply unsettling because it carried an authenticity that polished press conferences never do. This wasn't about an ankle sprain. This wasn't about load management. And it certainly wasn't about some minor, day-to-day detail that gets lost in the churn of a long season. No, this was different. The way Cunningham and Hull spoke, the tone in their voices, the seriousness in their expressions hinted at something much larger at play. It felt like an unveiling of truth, not a scripted announcement. And that's what has everyone from Fever fans to WNBA veterans rattled. Let's be honest, athletes are trained to keep things tight-lipped. Teams often prefer to control the narrative, making sure messages align with organizational goals. Yet, in this case, two players bypassed that entire system. That alone is controversial. Did they act with Clark's blessing? Did management approve? Or are we witnessing teammates taking matters into their own hands because they felt the public needed to know something bigger was going on? These are the questions dominating airwaves, sports blogs, and locker rooms right now, and here's why it matters. In professional sports, perception is everything. The fact that Cunningham and Hall chose to make this announcement instead of a coach, GM, or even Clark herself instantly changes the way it's received. It feels personal, it feels urgent, and it feels like something they could no longer keep behind closed doors. Fans, of course, are eating this up, but insiders are whispering that such moves are rare and often signal unrest or pivotal shifts. When teammates step into the spotlight like this, it suggests they're carrying a message too heavy to ignore. Perhaps it's about Clark's treatment by referees and opponents. Perhaps it's about the pressure mounting on her young shoulders. Or maybe it's about dynamics within the Fever locker room that the public hasn't seen yet. Whatever the case, the decision to speak out in this raw, unscripted way guarantees that this is more than a casual update. It's a declaration that something fundamental is changing for Caitlin Clark, for the Fever, and maybe even for the WNBA. And that's why the timing couldn't be more explosive. Right in the thick of a highly competitive season, when every game matters and rivalries are peaking, Sophie Cunningham and Lexy Hull chose to rock the foundation of the narrative. They didn't wait for the off-season. They didn't let PR control the story. They went straight to the public, and in doing so, they transformed what could have been a minor note into one of the most talked about developments in women's basketball today. The WNBA is no stranger to storylines, but this one feels different because it's so personal. It's no longer just about a game, it's about identity, loyalty, and the risks players will take to protect one of their own. And that's why fans and analysts alike are treating this as something bigger than basketball. The moment Sophie Cunningham and Lexy Hull uttered their announcement, the WNBA didn't just react, it erupted. It was as if someone had thrown gasoline on an open flame. Within minutes, hashtags tied to Caitlin, Clark, Cunningham, and Hull were trending across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Fans weren't just curious, they were frantic, dissecting every word, every facial expression, and every subtle pause in the delivery. This wasn't just news. It was a cultural moment in the league, the kind of event that pulls in even casual followers who normally wouldn't pay attention to mid-season fever developments. And it wasn't only the fans. Rival coaches, league insiders, and even veteran players from other franchises admitted that they were blindsided. Analysts scrambled on live shows to offer speculation, some comparing the shockwaves to when a superstar demands a trade or announces a sudden retirement. Think about that for a moment. Two teammates speaking about Caitlin Clark carried the same weight, the same electricity, as a blockbuster franchise-altering decision. That alone shows how powerful the ripple effect was. Social media feeds became ground zero for the frenzy. One moment, you'd see die-hard Fever fans pledging unconditional support, declaring that Cunningham and Hull were doing what no one else had the courage to do. The next moment, critics chimed in, questioning whether teammates should ever break such news or whether they had overstepped boundaries meant for management or Clark herself. The debates weren't just about basketball anymore. They became discussions about loyalty, power dynamics in sports, and the evolving role of players as voices beyond the court. Then came the media amplification. Major outlets like ESPN, Bleacher Report, and Yahoo Sports jumped on the story within hours. Talk shows led with it, podcasts devoted emergency episodes to it, and columnists rushed to frame it as a turning point. Suddenly, what started as a few words from Cunningham and Hull snowballed into a league-wide conversation about Caitlin Clark, her future, and what this all means for the Fever. Even rivals, usually eager to take advantage of Indiana's distractions, seemed hesitant to comment too directly, which only fueled the mystery further. The ripple effect also reached into locker rooms across the WNBA. Opposing players reportedly began whispering, asking their own questions. Was Clark injured? Was she unhappy? Was this about something deeper, perhaps an unspoken issue with the league's handling of her meteoric rise? These whispers matter because in professional sports, perception can shift the balance of power. Once uncertainty creeps in, it changes the way opponents strategize, the way fans support, and even the way referees officiate. But perhaps the most telling sign of the ripple effect came from the Fever themselves. The team, caught in the middle of this storm, remained tight-lipped in official statements, fueling even more speculation. Silence can be deafening in sports. And in this case, the lack of clarity only intensified the storm. Instead of calming the waters, it gave fans and media the green light to spin theories, create narratives, and push the story to viral levels. What Cunningham and Hull unleashed was more than just news. It was a chain reaction. They sparked debates about trust, transparency, and the unwritten rules of how teammates should handle delicate information. They pulled Caitlin Clark, already under immense pressure, into the center of a firestorm that seems far from cooling down. And most importantly, they reminded everyone of one simple truth. In today's world, a few unfiltered words from the right people can shift the conversation of an entire league overnight. If there's one thing that makes this entire story so compelling, it's the bond between Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexy Hull, a bond so strong that fans have started to describe it as sisterhood on hardwood. In sports, chemistry is often talked about in vague terms: how players mesh, how they communicate, how they share the ball. But with these three, it's something far deeper, something fans can see in every game, every sideline interaction, and every moment of adversity they've endured together. And that bond is precisely why this announcement hit the league like an earthquake. When Clark first stepped into the WNBA spotlight, expectations were sky high. The media was relentless, the schedule brutal, and opposing defenses seemed intent on testing her toughness from the very first game. For most rookies, that's enough to cause cracks. But Caitlin didn't face those challenges alone. Sophie Cunningham, with her fearless swagger and refusal to back down, positioned herself as Clark's shield, the teammate who would step in when opponents got too physical, who would stare down anyone who thought about roughing her up. Lexy Hull, on the other hand, became the steady hand, the calm presence, the anchor in chaos. Together, they weren't just teammates, they were a fortress around Clark, fans noticed. Clips of Cunningham stepping up after a hard foul, or Hull pulling Clark off the court with an encouraging pat, went viral for reasons beyond basketball. They told a story of loyalty. They told a story of three women who weren't going to let each other drown in the noise. And that story grew into a narrative that the Indiana Fever had something rare, something teams dream about but rarely find. An unbreakable trio built not just on skill, but on trust. Think about the grind of a WNBA season. The constant travel, the doubleheaders, the unrelenting scrutiny. It wears players down physically and mentally. For Clark, the added weight of being the league's newest superstar only magnified that pressure. But with Cunningham and Hull by her side, the burden seemed lighter. They laughed together in the highs, cried together in the lows, and made sure no one felt alone, not on the court, not in the locker room, not even in the most challenging personal moments. And that's what makes their announcement so significant. Because when players this close, players who have stood together through fouls, injuries, heartbreak, and triumph come forward with news about one of their own, it doesn't feel like PR spin. It feels like family speaking up for family. Fans sense it, analysts recognize it, even rival players respect it. The nickname Tres Leches, which fans playfully gave them, captures the essence of their connection. Sweet, strong, and layered. Much like the dessert itself, the trio's dynamic is both lighthearted and deeply meaningful. It's rare in professional sports to see this kind of visible friendship, this kind of unity that extends beyond game plans and box scores. And it's why people aren't treating Cunningham and Hull's words as ordinary. They're treating them as gospel from the inner circle, the voices of two people who know Clark better than anyone else in the league. So when Sophie Cunningham and Lexy Hull speak, the basketball world listens. Not because of titles, not because of stats, but because their bond with Caitlin Clark has been proven time and again in the moments that matter most. And that bond, that sisterhood, is precisely why this announcement has left everyone stunned, scrambling to understand what it really means. In every era of basketball, there's always that one player who becomes more than just a scorer, passer, or defender. Someone who embodies the spirit of the team, someone who makes it clear that their loyalty runs deeper than stats. For the Indiana Fever, that player is Sophie Cunningham. And when it comes to Caitlin Clark, Cunningham has stepped into a role that has defined her entire season. The protector, the enforcer, the one who makes sure no one lays a hand on Clark without answering to her. This reputation didn't come out of thin air. Earlier in the season, Caitlin Clark, already the target of physical play from opponents eager to test her toughness, took a particularly hard foul in a heated matchup. Before fans could even process what happened, Sophie Cunningham was there. She wasn't just present, she was fiery, confrontational, and unafraid to put herself in the middle of the storm. That moment wasn't just about defending a rookie. It was about sending a message: if you go after Caitlin Clark, you go through me first. Fans erupted. Clips of the confrontation lit up social media, drawing both praise and criticism. Cunningham was fined by the league for her actions, but in the eyes of Fever supporters, that fine became a badge of honor. It was proof that Sophie wasn't just another player. She was Clark's shield, her big sister on the court, willing to put reputation and even money on the line to ensure her teammates' safety. And in a league where physicality can sometimes border on hostility, especially toward high-profile rookies, Cunningham's stance mattered. It turned her into not just a teammate, but a symbol of loyalty. For Caitlin Clark, still navigating the unforgiving spotlight of the WNBA, having someone like Sophie by her side has been invaluable. It means stepping onto the court with the confidence that no matter how intense the game gets, no matter how rough the defense, there's someone watching her back. And for the Fever as a whole, it's given the team an identity: scrappy, unafraid, and united. Younger players, including Clark and Lexy Hull, have gravitated towards Sophie not just because of her grit, but because of her leadership style. She's the type of veteran who pushes her teammates hard, but also knows when to pull them in with reassurance. She celebrates their wins, shields them from criticism, and, in moments of crisis, reminds them that no one fights alone. It's no surprise that fans, commentators, and even rivals now describe her as the heartbeat of the Fever's locker room. And here's where it gets even more significant. Cunningham's protector role isn't just about intimidation or bravado, it's about culture. She's setting the standard for what it means to wear an Indiana Fever jersey. She's showing that toughness isn't just physical, it's emotional. That loyalty isn't just about winning games, it's about ensuring your teammates know you'll bleed for them if necessary. So when Sophie Cunningham speaks about Caitlin Clark, as she did in this shocking announcement, her words carry extra weight. Fans don't hear it as idle commentary. They hear it as the voice of someone who has put action behind every promise. Someone who has stood tall when others stayed silent. And someone who has shown time and again that protecting Caitlin Clark is not just her responsibility, it's her mission. This protector role, forged in fire and proven in conflict, is why Cunningham's involvement in this announcement has turned it from surprising news into something monumental. It's one thing for a coach or front office to make a statement about Clark. It's another when the woman who has physically stood between Clark and danger steps forward with news that could reshape how we see the future of the Fever. Every great sports story has its nicknames, those phrases that capture not just a team or player's identity, but the energy, the culture, and the feeling that surrounds them. For the Indiana Fever, that nickname became Tres Leches, a playful but powerful label fans gave to the trio of Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexy Hull. What started as an internet joke turned into something bigger, a movement, a symbol, and in many ways, the foundation of why this announcement feels so seismic today. At first, no one could have predicted it. Clark was the superstar rookie, carrying a mountain of expectations. Cunningham was the fiery veteran, known for her toughness, her fearlessness, and, at times, her polarizing presence on the court. Hull was the steady role player, reliable, unshakable, and often overlooked by mainstream coverage. On paper, they didn't scream Big Three, but basketball isn't played on paper, and chemistry can't be calculated in stat sheets. Somewhere along the grind of the season, these three became inseparable, both on and off the hardwood. The name Tres Leches, inspired by the famous Latin American dessert, was more than just clever wordplay. It spoke to the trio's identity, layered, sweet but tough, and impossible to break apart without losing its essence. Fans loved it because it was fun, catchy, and different, but over time, it became shorthand for something much deeper. Tres Leches came to represent a bond forged in sweat, bruises, and laughter. A nickname that wasn't manufactured by PR departments or marketing campaigns, but created by fans who saw the undeniable chemistry growing between Clark, Cunningham, and Hull. On the court, the synergy was obvious. Cunningham was the fire, Hull the calm, and Clark the spark that lit everything up. Cunningham brought the fight, the scrappiness, and protective edge that made sure no one bullied their star rookie. Hull brought the stability, the role player energy that kept the system balanced, doing the small things that never make headlines but always win games. And Clark, with her transcendent playmaking and star power, brought the spotlight that allowed the trio's bond to shine on the biggest stages. Together, they weren't just playing basketball. They were creating a culture, an energy, a story fans wanted to rally behind. Off the court, that bond grew even stronger. From interviews to candid moments captured by fans, their friendship became part of the Fever's brand. They joked together, defended each other in press conferences, and, most importantly, showed an authenticity that resonated. In a league constantly battling for attention and respect, authenticity matters. And Tres Leches became proof that this wasn't just a team, it was a family. That's why when Cunningham and Hull joined forces in making this announcement about Clark, it felt less like a statement from teammates and more like a declaration from sisters. Fans didn't see it as two players commenting on another. They saw Tres Leches standing together, united as always, proving that no matter what the news was, this trio remained a single, unshakable unit. And here's the irony. What began as a nickname rooted in lighthearted fandom has now become the centerpiece of one of the most dramatic turning points in the WNBA this season. Tres Leches isn't just a nickname anymore. It's a headline, it's a brand, and it's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful stories in sports are born not in boardrooms or highlight reels, but in the bonds players build when the world isn't watching. So when this trio speaks, when Tres Leches takes the mic, the entire basketball world has no choice but to listen. Here's the uncomfortable truth that many casual fans don't want to admit. Caitlin Clark's rookie season has not been all glitz, glamour, and game winners. Yes, she came in as the most hyped women's basketball prospect in a generation. Yes, she shattered attendance records, TV ratings, and social media engagement numbers before she even laced up for her first official WNBA game. But when you peel back the headlines, you find a young woman who's had to face some of the harshest growing pains the league has ever thrown at a rookie star. And it's in those struggles that the real story, the one behind this shocking announcement, begins to unfold. From day one, Clark had a target on her back. Opposing teams weren't just defending her, they were testing her. Every bump, every hard foul, every trash talk exchange, it wasn't just about basketball. It was about putting her in her place, reminding her that the WNBA is not the NCAA, and that no player, no matter how famous, gets a free pass here. The physicality Clark faced was unlike anything she'd seen before. Guards hounded her 94 feet, veterans baited her into frustration, and forwards delivered screens that felt more like body checks. And it showed in her early performances. Turnovers piled up, her efficiency dipped. Moments that looked effortless at Iowa suddenly seemed overwhelming at the pro level. Critics were quick to pounce. Headlines shifted from the savior of women's basketball to is Caitlin Clark overrated? Talk shows dissected every missed shot, every bad pass, every frustrated look she gave referees. In the harsh spotlight of pro sports, the honeymoon phase ended almost immediately. But here's the part that separates Clark from so many others. She didn't crumble. Instead, she adapted. Slowly, painfully, and publicly, she began the process of evolving her game. She adjusted to the speed of defenses, learned to play through physical contact, and discovered new ways to create offense when her shot wasn't falling. More importantly, she leaned on teammates like Sophie Cunningham and Lexy Hull, who helped shoulder the pressure and reminded her that no rookie is expected to do everything alone. The growth wasn't just physical, it was mental. Clark learned how to navigate criticism without losing herself. She stopped trying to silence doubters with flashy highlights and started focusing on winning possessions, winning quarters, and eventually, winning games. By mid-season, her turnovers began to drop, her decision-making sharpened, and her leadership qualities started to shine through. The same fans who once questioned her toughness were now applauding her resilience. The narrative shifted again. Clark wasn't just a superstar, she was becoming a survivor. This transformation is what makes today's announcement so powerful. Cunningham and Hull didn't stand beside Clark out of pity. They stood there because they've witnessed her fight, her grit, and her willingness to take every punch the league threw at her and keep standing. The struggles made the growth undeniable, and the growth made the announcement matter on a deeper level. It wasn't about hype anymore. It was about proof. Proof that Clark had earned every ounce of respect she's getting now, not through fame, but through fire. And that's the irony of it all. The very struggles that once threatened to derail Caitlin Clark's rookie season have now become the foundation of her story. A story that's still being written, but one that's already filled with lessons of resilience, toughness, and the kind of growth that only comes from walking through the storm and refusing to stop. If there's one thing the WNBA has struggled with historically, it's consistent mainstream media coverage. But when Caitlin Clark entered the league, that dynamic flipped almost overnight. Every game she played became a headline, every interaction a viral clip, every foul call a trending debate. The Fever didn't just gain a star, they became the league's most scrutinized franchise, with every decision, every lineup change, and every storyline magnified under the brightest of spotlights. And when Cunningham and Hull stood beside Clark to deliver this bombshell announcement, that spotlight exploded into a media frenzy unlike anything the WNBA has ever experienced. The press conferences were packed wall to wall with cameras. National sports shows that had previously ignored the WNBA were suddenly leading with it. Networks sent correspondents who'd never covered women's basketball before. It wasn't just about Clark anymore, it was about a cultural moment that demanded attention. And with attention comes controversy. Some pundits framed the announcement as a historic turning point for women's sports, while others dismissed it as overblown hype. Social media was even more divided, creating a digital battleground where fans, critics, and casual observers clashed in real time. This is the paradox of fame in the digital era. The same platforms that elevate a star can also drown them in noise. Every frame of Clark's reaction was dissected. Was she too emotional? Too stoic? Was Cunningham really sincere in her support? Was Hull just playing the role of loyal teammate? Every angle was spun into narratives, and those narratives shaped public opinion almost as fast as the news broke. The story wasn't just reported, it was weaponized. But here's the key. The frenzy, as chaotic as it was, also elevated the league to new heights. Suddenly, WNBA highlights weren't tucked away on page 6, they were leading SportsCenter. Talk radio hosts were debating Fever games alongside NFL preseason updates. The announcement wasn't just a Fever story or a Caitlin Clark story, it became a WNBA story. And for once, the league wasn't fighting for airtime. It was commanding it. Yet, with that visibility came a new kind of pressure. For Clark, Cunningham, and Hull, the announcement meant living under an even harsher microscope. Every bad game would now be seen as a collapse. Every injury scare would spark panic. Every win would be framed as validation. And perhaps that's why their unity Tres Leches standing together mattered so much. Because in the frenzy of media noise, they knew the storm was only just beginning, and surviving it would take more than individual brilliance. It would take solidarity. In the end, the media frenzy surrounding the announcement wasn't just about sensationalism. It was proof that Clark's impact, and by extension, Cunningham and Hull's roles in it, had crossed into uncharted territory. They weren't just athletes anymore. They were headline drivers, cultural figures, and, whether they liked it or not, lightning rods in a sports world that had suddenly decided women's basketball was too big to ignore. Let's be clear, Caitlin Clark didn't just join the WNBA, she disrupted it. Rivalries that once simmered quietly under the surface suddenly ignited into full-blown wars the moment she stepped on the hardwood. And this shocking announcement, delivered with Cunningham and Hull at her side, didn't calm those fires, it poured gasoline on them. Because in a league already stacked with pride, legacy, and competitiveness, Clark's meteoric rise represented both opportunity and threat. From the very beginning, veterans weren't going to give Clark an easy path. The fouls were harder, the words sharper, the stares colder. Diana Taurasi, one of the greatest to ever touch a basketball, didn't hesitate to send a message when she reminded everyone that rookies, no matter how hyped, need to pay their dues. Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky reignited their college rivalry with Clark, and that feud quickly became must-watch television in the pros. Every Fever Sky game wasn't just basketball. It was theater, drama, and intensity, wrapped in 4 quarters of basketball warfare. And then came Sophie Cunningham, her fiery personality. Her willingness to step into the line of fire made her Clark's enforcer, the teammate unafraid to take a fine or a hard foul if it meant sending a message. You mess with Clark, you mess with all of us. That protective energy intensified rivalries even further. Other teams weren't just facing Caitlyn anymore. They were facing a trio bonded by loyalty, one that fans quickly dubbed Tres Leches. The name may sound playful, but the message it carried was serious. These 3 were inseparable, and together, they were a problem every team had to deal with. The announcement, while uplifting to Fever fans, was also interpreted by rivals as a declaration of strength. It said, "We're united, we're locked in, and we're here to dominate." And that rubbed competitors the wrong way. Social media lit up with rival fan bases mocking the unity, calling it a gimmick, while Fever fans clapped back, fueling an online rivalry that mirrored what was happening on the court. The lines were drawn. You were either with Clark and her trio, or you were against them. There was no middle ground. But here's the twist. These rivalries, as heated as they are, have been good for the league. They've driven attendance, spiked TV ratings, and turned games into events. The Fever's matchups against the Sky, the Mercury, or any veteran-led team now carry playoff-level energy, even in the regular season. Clark's presence has turned every night into a statement game, and Cunningham and Hull's loyalty has only heightened the stakes. At the end of the day, rivalries define sports. Magic versus Bird, Lakers versus Celtics. These battles write history, and now, with Clark in the mix, the WNBA has rivalries that feel just as raw, just as personal, and just as unforgettable. This announcement didn't just strengthen Clark's camp, it hardened the opposition, ensuring that every game moving forward would be more than just a contest of skill. It would be a fight for pride, for validation, and for dominance in a league that suddenly feels more competitive than ever. Sports history is filled with iconic duos and trios. Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman in Chicago, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. In Miami, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, and Lauren Jackson in women's basketball lore. But in Indianapolis, a new phenomenon is quietly, and sometimes loudly, taking over. Tres Leches. Yes, the playful nickname fans coined for Caitlyn Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexy Hull. At first, it started as a joke, a meme circulating on social media after one of their poolside TikToks went viral. But quickly, what began as a bit of fun snowballed into a movement. Tres Leches wasn't just a nickname, it became an identity. Fans started printing it on homemade t-shirts, creating memes, even branding tailgate parties around it. The Fever's PR team, smart enough to ride the wave, leaned into it, amplifying the bond that had already captured the hearts of fans. Before long, the trio was being marketed as not just teammates, but as the WNBA's new power clique, a group that embodied unity, charisma, and a defiant sense of fun in the middle of serious competition. And here's why this mattered. The WNBA, like many leagues before it, thrives not just on athletic brilliance, but on personality. Fans don't just connect with stats, they connect with stories. They want to believe in something bigger than the box score. Tres Leches gave them exactly that. Cunningham, with her fiery grit, Hull, with her quiet loyalty, and Clark, with her transcendent stardom, 3 very different personalities blended into one inseparable bond. Fans felt like they weren't just supporting a team, they were following a story of friendship, loyalty, and resilience in real time. The nickname also carried symbolic weight. Tres Leches, a sweet, layered dessert, became a metaphor for their connection. Each one unique, each one distinct, but together, creating something richer, fuller, and undeniably appealing. The brand resonated with young fans, especially girls who saw in them not just athletes, but role models who embraced individuality while building something collective. And in a league fighting for more mainstream attention, this kind of cultural spark was gold. Critics, of course, weren't silent. Some called the nickname corny. Others dismissed it as a distraction from the real game. But what those voices missed was the bigger truth. Culture sells. And Tres Leches wasn't distracting fans from basketball, it was pulling them into it. Attendance at Fever games climbed. Merchandise sales jumped. Social media engagement skyrocketed. Suddenly, the Fever weren't just a basketball team. They were a phenomenon. This announcement, framed around their unity, only cemented Tres Leches further into WNBA lore. It wasn't just about standing beside Clark. It was about telling the world, we are in this together, and were not afraid to show it. For fans, that was more powerful than any stat line. For the league, it was proof that stars and their stories could propel women's basketball into mainstream consciousness. When future generations look back on this era of the WNBA, they won't just talk about Caitlin Clark's rookie year. They'll talk about the cultural ripple that was Trey Leche's, the nickname, the energy, the phenomenon. It was bigger than a game. It was a moment in time when basketball, friendship, and culture collided to create something unforgettable.